Jorge Martin is the 2024 MotoGP World Champion here in Barcelona. Like for every world champion in this paddock, it is the culmination of an already long, twisty career. But you could look at Martin's results, his Red Bull Rookies Cup title, his Moto3 title, his time front-running in Moto2, his immediate impact in MotoGP, and go, well, this is just another Marc Marquez, this is just another Pedro Acosta, this is that, hyper talent that we always knew was going to be here. That doesn't really tell you the full story, because for Jorge Martin, there have been some real big twists and turns on the way here, twists and turns that are reflected in the fact that in 2025 he will not ride for the team that he won the title with, and the team that he won the title with is the first independent champion in the history of MotoGP. Before we get to that, Simon, you've known Jorge for quite a while. How has he changed, and what has he had to overcome?
I mean, when you go far enough back in this kid's career, we're talking about someone who, in the very beginning, maybe didn't even have a way to make it into MotoGP, it looked like, because in the initial stages, I remember being in the press conference where he was awarded the Moto2 or the Moto3 title back in 2018 in Valencia, where he cried on stage about how if it hadn't been for the Red Bull Rookies Cup, he would never have made it as a professional racer. He referred to it again yesterday, Val, when he won the MotoGP title, by saying that they came from a normal family. They didn't have a huge amount of money. They had to scrimp and save and make it work, and Red Bull Rookies Cup was the vessel that allowed him to have a career. And whenever you go into it even further, he didn't even get selected for Red Bull Rookies Cup the first time he tried. It was the second time round that he got allowed into that championship. So no part of this story has been an easy journey to the top.
Yeah, and obviously Red Bull Rookies Cup run with KTM machinery, run with KTM support. But at that point, when he won it, when he made the impact in Red Bull Rookies Cup, it didn't have that sprawling junior system that it has right now that's producing, your Pedro Acostas, your David Alonso's. So it took him a little bit to even get into the KTM colors, which happened in Moto2. Now, by Moto2, it was clear that this guy was quite special. By Moto2, KTM had him on a contract that had a MotoGP option. So if this works out normally, Jorge Martin, probably in KTM colors now, or in some completely different situation, that option was to be activated in 2020. However, in 2020, and this is according to reporting by Speedweek, the German publication, the German language publication, Red Bull owned, with journalist Gunther Riesinger, who's very high connected there, and with quotes from KTM higher-ups. According to that story, the contract that they had him under had a free agency clause, and that free agency clause would be activated if KTM had no riders in the top 10 in the Riders' Championship in MotoGP by June of 2020. KTM got much better in 2020. It was a really good bike. It finished, I think, with 2 riders in the top 10. By June, there were no riders in the top 10. In the MotoGP standings, there were no MotoGP standings. There was COVID, and that apparently, according to KTM, which they're very unhappy about, was used by Jorge Martin's management, to leave, to shack up with Ducati and make an immediate impact in MotoGP. Simon, what can you tell us about that immediate impact and the people around Martin, his entourage?
I mean, Martin came into the first round, was immediately looking fast, qualified in pole position at his second race at those 2 races we had at the start of that season to open the championship in Qatar. And you can get a bit of a measure of a kid by the people around him. He's been supported all the way through by superstars, and I think that has rubbed off on him. We all know that Aleix Espargaro is essentially his big brother, as he refers to himself these days. He's his mentor and has been for the last 3 or 4 years. But before that, it was Jorge Lorenzo that brought him all the way up through. The first time I ever met him was at the opening of Jorge Lorenzo's bar and museum in Andorra, all the way back in 2017. I remember partying with him and Jorge Lorenzo in Valencia in 2018, the night that Martin won his first ever race. At the press conference where he won his championship in 2018, Lorenzo was there in his Ducati team clothing in the back of the press conference to cheer for him. And both of these guys helped him out again, not just professionally but financially. They helped him pay for flights, they helped him pay for travel, because they're all managed in the same group by veteran paddock manager Albert Valera, who's brought them all the way up through. So he arrived in MotoGP with a little bit of expectation, based on a really strong Moto2 season, an incredible Moto3 career where he was Mr. Pole Position. And really, when he qualified on pole position in that second race, no one was too surprised, because one lap is his strength. But from there, it's been strength to strength. He was a little bit delayed. He got very badly injured. I think more badly injured maybe than most people realise at Portimao in that first season, with a real nasty career-threatening injury that set him back for months and months. If it hadn't been for that, we would have seen him at the sharp end even faster. But as it is, he was able to bounce back from it. We went back to Portimao later that year. He buried some demons there. He admitted that he was nervous going into the weekend and came out of it smiling. And from there on, it's just been up, up, up for Jorge Martin.
The way he's talked about it yesterday, the way he's talked about it throughout these past 2 years was the Ducati move came with his self-confidence and with almost what he perceived was a guarantee of a works ride. Now, we re-listened to some of the older interviews from, I think, the start of 2022, and you hear the 2023 works move into some garage, but some being Ducati, being talked about as almost a certainty. It's my seat. I just have to take it. I just have to displace incumbent Jack Miller. Famously, that did not happen. In 2022, he got saddled with an engine spec that wasn't right, and he couldn't get right all the season. It was a different engine spec to the engine spec that Pecco Bagnaia used to win the title. Otherwise, the bikes were, I imagine, more or less the same. Ducati deliberated, thought about it. In Martin's understanding, they changed their mind by taking Enea Bastianini for 2023. Then in 2023, Enea Bastianini didn't hit the ground running, but got immediately injured, so that whole season was a write-off. Again, there was clearly an expectation of Martin that there is a possibility Ducati will see the light, will finally give him the red colors that he deserved. Didn't happen. Not sure how easily it would have been contractually, but ultimately didn't happen. You can see why, because again, the Bastianini season was a write-off. He would have had it in 2025, right? In a head-to-head with Bastianini this year. He would have had it. It's clear, look at the standings, he would have had it. Curveball. The most famous, potentially the greatest rider in the history of MotoGP is in the Ducati camp, proven on Ducati, wants the factory Ducati seat, he gets it. And this is how Jorge Martin, your world champion, your assumed number one holder, he didn't say, but almost certainly will be, is leaving. Not just leaving Pramac, leaving Ducati, going to Aprilia, potentially taking the number one to Aprilia. Simon, we've described all of this, gradually. There's factors for why it happened. Has Ducati messed up here somehow? Has it misplayed its cards in some moment?
I mean, arguably yes, but not for 2025. That mistake came in 2022 whenever they didn't immediately give Martin the chance to go onto the factory machinery then and went with with Bastianini instead. I think that Enea Bastianini has been unlucky, but the weird thing has been that he's gotten away with that bad luck because it's almost transferred onto Jorge Martin in terms of long-term career repercussions. Because if he hadn't been injured, his season probably wouldn't have matched Jorge Martin's anyway, but Ducati gave him the benefit of the doubt because he'd been injured and give that opportunity to him for a second season. You've got to feel sorry for Jorge Martin because it's kind of the story of his entire career, where other people's misfortune or other people's incidents, other people's moves have affected his career in a way that should really never have led him to being a Ducati World Champion yesterday. It's been a really odd path to get here. Looking forward though, I don't know what Ducati could have done for 2025 differently, because it's Marc Marquez. The gravitational pull that name brings to any team, to any situation, just means that it's really, really difficult to see how they could have done anything else but sign this guy. And unfortunately, that came at the expense of Jorge Martin.
He is not only our independent champion, he is our nomad champion in a way in the story that we've just told. The thing is, I thought there was a bit of ill feeling between him and Ducati now, maybe one-sided from his side. Now that the title's done, the way he's talked about it has significantly softened, which is easier to do when the championship is taken care of. Could come back in the future, couldn't he?
I mean, he's going to Aprilia as an experiment. He's going there to see what happens. We don't know where the bike is. That's the thing here. The bike might be a bit better than it looks. We don't know. He's immediately going to know, much in the same way that Valentino Rossi knew right away what the Ducati was like the first time he jumped on it all those years ago at Valencia. That's going to shape the future. it would not in any way surprise me to see a Valentino Rossi-esque career trajectory where he goes to Aprilia for 2 seasons, he discovers that the bike is good enough for the occasional podium, maybe good enough for the occasional win, but not good enough to fight for a championship, and that means that we see him find his way back into the red colours for 2027.